You're listening to The Inside Scoop, a podcast about self-improvement and knowledge seeking. Our aim is to explore a diverse range of topics and perform self-checks on whether we're being the best versions of ourselves every week. I'm your host, Marius Urbalis, and we're joined here by my co-host, Oscar, saying hi to you. Hi there, dude.
Hello.
And we're here. Let's get started. So this week we thought we're going to chat a little bit about creativity and, I don't know, what is it? Originality. That was another word that you kind of brought up unexpectedly, sort of. Although, what do you... Okay, so I mean, straight, just like right off the bat, what do you think the difference is between originality and creativity?
Just on the spot right now, I was, because I haven't had given myself a lot of time to think about this, I feel like maybe originality is the product of creativity.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
If you're creativity, I think you might be in this in a creative state, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
You would describe yourself as being creative, and then if you're being creative, you probably produce something original out of being creative. That's just my little...
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I
What
see
do
your
you
take.
think?
I see your take. Yeah. I think like originality, right? Originality is actually doing or like creating something different, right? Something different that maybe other people have created. Because even if you create something that has already been created, that's still considered creativity, I think. Right? Although originality depends on what scope you look at, may imply that you're not being original in a specific domain. For example, I know because like in Lithuania, for example, right, like a smaller Eastern European country where we were still under like the siege of the Soviet Russia. I don't even know how to, like, you would describe such a nonsense thing. But anyway, it's like our culture and everything is kind of lagged behind. But then someone comes in or like comes up with like a new idea, which is really just a copy of an idea that has already been out there in the West. You know, like in America, there's like a late night show. And I've only seen a first late night show like a year or two ago. I think a year ago, someone actually created a late night show in Lithuania. And it was like a completely new thing. And it was like, oh, this is so original. But it's just because no one out there has ever seen such a thing outside of it, you know? For me, it was something like, well, I am familiar with the concept. I don't really enjoy these shows. So as much as it's new or whatever, like I don't care about it at all, right? But for some, it may be considered original because the domain is like a countrywide kind of originality, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose you can think you're original globally, maybe even, or whatever the global scope is. That doesn't have to be global as in the globe. That could be like within your university, because we have the concept of globality and programming, for example. Something is global, it concerns the entire program. But anyway, you might think you're being original, but you actually aren't, because people can come up with the same stuff at the same time just because of the state that the world, the context, whatever is in right now. And so actually I had a situation recently in a graphic designers forum on Facebook, and there was something posted by somebody who thought it was original. It was kind of a joke thing. 2020 Olympics, the logo for it was like having, because it was already past COVID, or not past COVID, but once COVID has become a thing. So 2020 Olympics were cancelled, and so the logo that they made as a joke was that all of the 5 rings were not touching each other; they were just
Nice.
And so they posted it in there, and quickly somebody pointed out in the comments that they thought they actually stole this from somewhere else because they had seen the meme, I guess, somewhere else already. And I was like, well, that's I think that's a joke that very many people are capable of, or a meme that very many people are capable of coming up. But this time, there's only 2 things. There's the logo of the 2020 Olympics, and there's the situation of COVID, and you put those two together, it's pretty easy to come up with this joke logo. So I don't necessarily think the person was stealing the work and pretending it was their own. I think it was just a case of multiple people coming up with the same idea and at the same time.
For sure, I could see that, and I'm currently scrolling through my YouTube history because I literally saw something like that, like what was it though? Yeah, whatever it was some sort of a video where like a guy was talking about some concept like that, and then he mentioned some different way of looking at the concept, and I was like, oh, that is so smart, but that is so simple. I could have come up with something like that myself. Like it's so obvious, but then at the same time, right? The louder you speak, the more your voice is being heard over the other people, right? So it's like, I don't know much about like Apple's history and stuff, right? I know that watch the movies, but then the movies might be actually dramatizations of what the actual events happen. But from what I understand, there still was some sort of a thing where, you know, Steve Jobs was the visionary, the person who saw the vision. But then again, right, like I don't want to like take on anyone. The standard stereotype is that Woz created everything. He worked, engineered everything, and Steve just stole it or whatever, right? That's like the most basic thing where you can hear by some deniers say that. Like, again, I'm not taking anyone's side. I don't know. I would have, like, whatever it was. I feel like they probably merged together into one consciousness where they actually, you know, completed each other's flaws in one point or the other. But it's just like someone takes an idea and runs with it, you know? In the movie there was a thing where it, like, this was depicted somewhere. So I was like, I don't know.
I mean, from the movie which I watched, I think we probably watched the same movie. Who was playing Steve Jobs in the movie? Was it?
There were two movies. I watched both. I don't remember which one that was specifically.
So anyway, I was portrayed was that that Steve Jobs was the visionary, and he was, once he had the company, he was pushing everyone very hard to work into their limits in the company. But with Woz, I think from the start, Woz was doing all the circuitry work, and Steve Jobs just kind of got together with him, and Steve got the contacts and everything, and so he kind of sorted out that part of it, contacts and getting this product to people, and Woz was doing the technical stuff. So I don't think Woz also has any issues or big issues with Steve Jobs. I don't think he hates.
No, and you're actually
done wrong.
No, you're absolutely correct, actually, because watching the recent interviews after like Steve Jobs' passing, Wozniak's interviews, he doesn't like talk very like negatively about it. It's just like, you know, whatever happened. What we have is a global phenomenon, which is a damn Apple company, like the giant they are, you know. And it didn't come from nowhere, you know. There were people hard at work. So yeah, I don't know. So we're kind of steering slowly away from creativity. I mean, this is all in the like creativity domain, and I just have like 4 questions I want to quickly run through myself.
Okay.
What does creativity mean? I think we kind of sort of touched on it, right? It's like creativity, originality. So I was just like researching. What does creativity mean? What do you think it means?
What I think it means.
Yeah, creativity. Doesn't have
I think we talked about this
a
before,
scientific
actually,
term. So just
or a definition from like a dictionary. I think that would be quite boring. I think we spoke about creativity before, actually, a little bit when we talked about the hot and the cold state. But the way we talked about it then was that when you're in a hot state, creative state, also you kind of just ignore the boundaries or the real world on things, when you just let your mind drift and go places. And this kind of happens. I was actually watching today morning. I don't usually watch things in the morning. I really shouldn't. I was watching Lex Friedman's Day in the Life of, which was released a long time ago, but I just got around to watching that. And he was talking about how, when he sits down to work and he's got his deep work sessions in the morning, which I found interesting that we have that parallel. But when he's in this deep work session, he has lots of ideas that spring to mind. And he talks about them as trying not to tug on these ideas when they come in, just try to write them down and continue with the work, because they're kind of like a distraction. They're like coming in trying to distract you from work. It's like yourself trying to sabotage you from getting the actual work done, because it's getting work done is work. It's not fun, but it's not supposed to be fun. And these ideas just kind of come in. They're like a mechanism for giving yourself an excuse not to do the work, because you're like, this is a brilliant idea, I've got to do something about this. But then soon after you realize, it's like, I'm not actually going to do anything with this idea. It's just an idea. And I kind of went on a tangent from actually talking about the hot state. But
but I wish that happened more often, when I just do something boring and then some freaking creative ideas come in. Like I would not be opposed to that.
Yeah, the task doesn't necessarily have to be boring, but it's just like, you have to do this now. It's not a choice. Yeah. So it could be like it could be a difficult task, and that's probably where, or an intensive, study session or work session, where you have to do a lot of thinking. Well, we call it deep work. That's where the ideas come out also, but they're like kind of a byproduct of it, of the process. And if you try to investigate these ideas alone after your work session or whatever, you might realize that either a lot of them are not feasible because of the time restraints and other things in your other goals that you have. It's like you have so many ideas, you can't do all of them. You can't get around to I lost the word, doing them. And so once you're back in your cold state, you're like, you
probably look at them and say, oh, these ideas are kind of shit, to be honest. It's good that I didn't act on it.
Either shit, or they're just way too big, out of scope at the moment. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I do feel like it's probably coming back to the podcast when we talked about how we work, how like the different workloads where we perform well under. I don't know if it's the best time to like actually talk about this now, as we're like 13 minutes into this podcast. We could actually move this over to the next week to analyze a bit better the workloads that we subjected ourselves to this semester. And I feel like maybe if this week, because I heard your concerns last time we talked about how like you're kind of like overwhelmed. I don't know if this word fits well, but you probably know better how you feel about the things that are happening currently. But I just know that you're under like a lot of pressure from everywhere, all the things that you do. So if you want to just like chat about that next time, if you're okay with it, maybe you're going to be better, less things to do, and maybe you can do a better analysis on it. No, just a suggestion,
I'm easy. I'm happy to talk about it now or next week. I'm easy.
Yeah, I think we could leave it
to... got a lot to... Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could leave it till next week so we could like analyze it a bit better. And that would be a bit of a tangent from the creativity, but kind of, everything stems from each, like all the topics kind of come together anyway. What's
your research on creativity?
My research on creativity is actually the dictionary definition.
Okay.
Just when you said, dictionary definition would actually be boring, I was like, yeah, this guy knows. This guy knows,
no,
man.
I mean, I care about the dictionary definitions because we sway from them too much these days. People want to redefine things all the time because they haven't educated themselves first on the real definitions of things, and then they start a movement about centered around a wrongly defined word, and then some dictionaries bend to that, and they're like, actually, some people now consider this to mean something else, especially Merriam-Webster. So I don't know about the libs there, but yeah, let's hear the dictionary definition of originality, I guess.
Creativity. But I mean, similarly, like, so it is actually the use of imagination or original ideas to create something. And then inventiveness. It probably comes as a synonym. So it's like the use of imagination or original ideas to create something. Again, we have big words, huge words in one sentence. We have imagination, we have originality, I guess, original ideas. And like, again, we're thinking, how original should you be? And like, what does it mean, you know? Maybe if two people create the same thing, I don't know if you've heard of these things. Apparently, throughout the history, there were inventions that were actually invented at the same exact time on the complete opposite side of the world, for example. No, these like coincidences happen. And then some people claim, I don't know, again, I don't know if these are myths. I don't want to, keep spitting some conspiracy theories which are false, but I've heard this. So I was like, it does kind of seem like this could be true. Because if the time was right for someone to invent something and it happened at the same exact time, well, not like exact time, somewhere in different places, it could happen, right?
I think there are some inventions that are so disruptive. Somebody had to take a real tangent to come at some conclusion that completely disrupts a field. It's like, we've been doing this wrong the whole time. This is how we're doing it now. And potentially after something like that, somebody like Einstein coming along and with theory of relativity, it's like, what are the chances somebody will have come up with the same stuff as he did there, working as a patent office clerk? What are the chances somebody has come up with the same ideas like that at the same time? It's like zero. It's near zero.
Yeah.
But I think there are things where, especially after something, a big discovery like that, big invention, discovery, and science like that, opens up a whole lot of new doors. And at that time, the people who are paying attention to this, if the attention is drawn to this all around the world, people can be working on the similar knowledge now, similar new knowledge, and from that can spring similar ideas. So I mean, that's totally possible, but I don't know of any specific cases. It would be interesting.
We're actually getting Clayman to help us check our facts, asking what is the example of invention that happened at the same time. And my friend, I can provide you with like 7 of them, to be honest. I just wanted to like check facts myself, right?
Yeah.
Brief history in the 1600s. Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz discovered calculus. Don't know how true or false that is. Carl Wilhelm Scheele and Joseph Priestley discovered oxygen. I don't know how that happened. I mean, it's
before that.
people before 1770s like breathing out of their asses or whatever. I don't know. No, I mean, this is like probably the chemical, obviously, like chemical. Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace both describe natural selection in the 1800s. We have Louis Daguerre and Henry Fox Talbot invent the first photographic methods. We have Louis Ducot, Duréon, and Charles Cros, whoever, like how he present the earliest workable methods of color photography on the same day in the 1869. Present this. I mean, imagine they just probably maybe one of them steals the other's idea, and just comes up like. And then 2 more, just real quick. Jonas Salk and Albert Bruce Sabin invented the polio vaccine in the 1950s, and the most recent one. So I feel like we will have more information on this, and if you guys want to check it yourselves, in 2015, so 2015, we actually had Takaki Kajita and Arthur B. McDonald they were jointly awarded the Nobel Prize for finding the neutrinos have mass. So if they were both awarded a Nobel Prize, we can only confirm that this shit is real, right? I'm like, dude.
But it's not a case of them working together on this.
I wouldn't think so. So again, we would have to like check it. But we're not like a scientist podcast. Let's look at NobelPrize.org press release.
Of the ones you said, I mean, I'm aware of the ones in mathematics from other sources. So how true it is, who knows? I mean, how true is it that they both or like independently came up with this, or one saw the other's work or something? But I've definitely heard about that one before.
Yeah, like it is interesting, man. I don't know. So in this case, right? Let's just assume for a moment that this happens in real time and then like at the same time, and both of the guys creative. Are both of these ideas original ideas? Like, what? I mean, obviously we don't have the answers. We can only ask like good questions, but are they both the creators of it? Or maybe there's some sort of like matter which was like in the way that matter moves in the world, it was already determined that this invention was going to be, you know, done. And then it just so happened that two guys met the criteria for having the perfect breeding ground for like the invention to actually happen or whatever. I don't know.
Sounds like determinism with extra steps.
What is that?
Determinism of extra steps. What you just described. Determinism.
Of extra steps.
With extra steps.
Oh, with extra steps. Yeah.
Yeah. But we spoke about determinism, you know. Determinism is right. I mean, for anybody who's maybe curious, who doesn't know determinism, the philosophy of everything that is going to happen and has happened was always going to happen as it did. We would have to go way deeper into this to see why this even it matters. But
that's a good pun because of the way matter moves, right? And it's a cause and effect. But
I'm interested in what is originality.
Yeah, true. Let's stick to this then. So,
right.
I mean, let's forget. I can't put the determinism thing out of my head now, because when you say originality, then I'm think like, whoa. But then it was determined, so both of the guys created this original idea, or was it like, I don't know, dude.
Essentially, to talk about what is originality, we don't need to be concerned with determinism, because so the originality would be the basic idea would be you don't just create calculus without previously having learned the mathematics discovered by mathematicians that came before you. Also, you don't just start writing in English without all the languages that preceded English, like Latin and so on.
True.
And so what is originality? Like, where does it come from? It's not just an idea that's just come out of you, out of nowhere, out of fairy dust.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of things that over your years in school and so on, and books that you've read, and today the internet, how much information is fed to you through the internet, and how disparate it is from everybody else. We all have our own we're all fed slightly different information.
Yeah, so it's like environment shapes you, right?
Yeah, and then all of that information that comes into your brain, you bounce it around in your brain, you do the thinking. And somehow you put it together and you notice, I've discovered something. And obviously there's methods to it, and we're taught about the method, like the scientific method.
Wait, is it true that the country that produced most patents is the United States? China. Okay, never mind. I heard that people are getting forced to be creative out there, to be honest. I don't want to get no one's interest in our podcast to, like, trigger someone to, like, go after us, because the Republic of China or whatever. No, not their. Okay, let's stop talking about China. But anyway, the United States of America follows it. Germany only having, like, what is it, 20%? Or no, 30% of what America has. So what I mean is, like, the environment has to be right for you to be able to create something in particular, right? You're probably not going to create a snowplow if you live in the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
And that's like that's like a very simple example, right? So most likely, with everyone having so much, well, talent out there, which is also being, like, developing themselves, improving and whatever, around other talent where the environment is actually set up for you to succeed, because there's just, it's a freedom. Maybe that's why you also have riots and lootings and all that nonsense. But out of that freedom comes also these huge, beautiful things. Like we just sent people to space in a private company's commercial space machine. Right?
Rocket.
Yeah, like, it just, well, SpaceX, Elon Musk, right? They're just like, okay, we can create a rocket, why not, right? And they did it. I don't know. I don't think I would have ever created a rocket. First of all, I don't have, like, existing finance, materials, talent, or knowledge myself, So you can only imagine that the company that is gonna be the first private company to actually send people to Mars, even now they're talking about the Mars thing, but anyway, is coming from the United States. So, I mean, it's a freedom, and the freedom somehow allows people to both have the extremes of the worst stuff that happens and the best at the same time. Because when Crew Demo 2 was actually happening, Bob and Doug were flying up to the International Space Station to do the demo test of the Dragon capsule. At the exact same time, Santa Monica and all of the other places were under curfew. There were lootings, shootings, police, all of that nonsense happening. So I literally remember the commentary of it saying, that is so nice to see that with all that bad that's happening in the world, we can still have this beautiful thing that happens. But anyway, this is a very, interesting and weird at the same time tangent from the creativity, but I'm just saying that freedom actually gives there has to be a specific environment for creativity to happen. I think so. Mm-hmm. And that's why my second question is, where does creativity come from? When I wrote the 4 questions. So I think this is a nice segue, but
I was thinking to peripherally kind of approach that question. I had a thing written down here, but I mean, you can say about originality is like in the process of creativity, and so actually it says creativity here. So I was asking the question: how does formal education imprison our creativity, and how can it be freed?
Ooh.
Right.
Okay. To this, I could actually bring up a point that Bix plays. So it's the first time ever that we're having someone participate in our preparation of the podcast, actually give a little thing of an idea, an insight. So their message was that creativity can be deceptive. For example, something that may be simple and easy for you to do, it's because you're used to doing it, right? might be extremely creative for someone else, and you wouldn't even think of it, right? For example, you are trained on. Actually, I'll just give an example from my own life. I was back in sixth, or like, I was very young, and I was like, holy shit, there's this thing called programming, and I can output hello world, and I was using Visual Basic. And then I was so like, huge ego. Now I'm kind of like, I'm a programmer, right? Even at like a young age. And I came to school sitting on my notebook, like noting down 30 different ways of how to make a click counter. Because my first program was like, I'm going to make a hit the button application. You're going to click the button and you're going to see the counter go up. And I had like 30 or so different ways of like how I was imagining you are supposed to increment a variable. I was like, this is like so difficult. Like, how do you make A become 2 when you click and then become 3 and then 4? Like, when I click, it becomes 1 and then it keeps becoming 1. So I'm like, anyway, so I just noted that on my notebook and I was like, yeah. This required extreme creativity, and I didn't come up with the solution. I just, I didn't know it. Now it seems so trivial because we're just trained to do that. And sometimes when I'm, let's explain, I don't know, like if we have like people who are programmers, not programmers listening, but like when you have a Boolean is a variable which can contain either true or false, like it's simple. It can either be on or off. How do you invert that? It just like it takes so long to like come up with a like a different solutions, but then you realize, oh wait, we also have this negation sign. So negation, it's the same thing where we have like sets in mathematics. You can like use the negation sign, I think, and it just like inverts it or whatever. So you can assign the variable to be the opposite of itself. And you can run this thing over and over, and it's going to just keep becoming the opposite of itself. Before you learn and like understand this concept, it can take you months to like come up with something like that yourself. So I feel like this was a good point. And then improving on the thing that you said about, if you could you repeat it again? Kind of like
formal education and prison our creativity.
Yeah, there we go. So it's like the things that you learn to do methodically in specific ways, they might be considered very creative for other people, So it's like the thinking outside the box kind of. So like does it imprison our creativity, or does it kind of raise the level of what we think creativeness means, but maybe at the same time it teaches us the methods, and our brain kind of gets comfortable thinking in terms of the methods, and then we just, I don't know, we just lose the passion to think creatively, right?
That's like hitting the nail on the head.
Boom.
I mean, that's how you say it, right?
Boom.
Yeah, I mean, totally. So, I mean, if you started as you did, I mean, you're so creative in coming up with an idea of how you can increment this variable and clicking a button, right?
Yeah, but I never came up with it, so.
Right. And I think if you thought long enough, and if you just read some literature, you would have eventually come out with
Bro, I was like 12.
How I could. I know, right? But if you knew, let's just hypothetically knew how, you've got variable and in a high level language, I suppose probably like C or something, and then if you knew that compiles down to like machine code and how it runs on a computer, and that you've got this register, and then that you send an computer instruction to this register and it increments, right? If you knew all that, I mean, you'd just come up with it, like you would know, right? And there's one way of doing it. But at the same time, yeah, as you like, it raises the level. Like if there is something that we've kind of decided this is how you do it, and like there is some things that there's no point really of trying to be creative about them, because like especially in engineering isn't about being creative about this. It's about learning knowledge. It's about being creative too, but it's about learning some knowledge, and then as much as possible, and being able to apply all this knowledge now that you've learned to solve problems, and that solving problems is the creative part. But it's based on some big what's it called? Big body of knowledge that you've learned.
Yeah.
Some big body of knowledge that you've learned, and so what the interesting thing is, at which point do you want to start being creative? So for me, for example, it was always throughout, not always, but a long time throughout school. It was like, at which point have I learned enough where I'm able to innovate myself, right? Because you want to get to that point, I think, where you're able to innovate yourself. Yeah,
that's true. So
also,
okay.
So yeah, if you're, for example, wanting to innovate, if you're going to innovate in some field, right? So in a certain field, in science, you do things a certain way. Now, what you might want to do, like if you learn a certain way of doing something, it's hard to come up with a new way of doing it, actually, because you've got one way that already works, and you kind of like programmed to think about it this way, right? So one thing that you can do, if you have the time, when you're already at the higher levels, and you're not just learning basic math, because you shouldn't start it. You shouldn't start being creative about how we can reimagine maths, because you're not going to get anywhere with that. But if you're at higher levels, where you're almost there, where you're maybe starting to do research, at the top levels of what you can actually be taught that way now, you might stop a little bit before that and be like, I want to explore how we could do this, how we could do this myself before I actually learn how we've already discovered of how to do this. And you might not come up with anything, but that's taking a shot, and that's where originality is risky, because if you learn, there's lots of resources out there for you to learn and apply, learn how to do things and apply them, and it's going to provide you a living. But if you feel like at some point in your educational journey, you feel like, I want to try to do this differently, right? If you can give yourself the time to explore the different, be creative, and at that point, you might actually come up with something new. And we spoke about this in like one of our first podcasts about interpretation. Imagine you just misinterpret some little thing that you were taught, and then you forget about it. But like you remember about, a year later, you're in a situation where actually this knowledge is useful, and you're like, without looking up, without trying to go out and learn how to do it, how we do it right now, try to figure out, how can I do this myself? And I did this as a challenge for myself in high school, and I never, like you, I never found the solution. It was I actually attempted properly to do it, I think, first in university in first year. I had very little knowledge of maths, but I tried to write a program that could display, I would give it some values, and it would display like a wireframe that I could turn around, a 3D wireframe of like a cube or something that I could turn around and stuff. And it kind of worked, but it really didn't. And I would have to know, if I knew the underlying maths, I could implement it. But I was like, if I just tinker with it and then try to figure it out myself, maybe I will learn more deeply what is involved, but not necessarily. So yeah, that's the kind of situation that I'm portraying here. I went on such a long rant, I know, but
yeah, I see what you mean. So where it comes from? It comes from. We just don't actually have a summary on where the creativity comes from. Oh no, actually,
yeah, put an almost impossible task in front of yourself and try to solve it.
So, but it's okay. Creativity also, I think, comes. Oh, that's okay. That's what my point was. So, creativity also comes from the correct environment, right? For example, we already like talked about the United States and all that. But let's just imagine again, I keep coming back to this, but the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're not necessarily going to be concerned with the creativity of like specific things if your basic needs aren't met, you know? So again, the environment, some people aren't fortunate enough to actually be able to, I mean, okay, be creative in specific fields. Obviously, when it comes down to like the lower levels of needing to have a shelter, have food and all of that, it is a difficult thing, you know? It's a difficult thing to talk about and even think about. But like, for specific creativity to be born, you know, there has to be like specific opportunities to like just everything has to align. Like, I don't know if we are going to have another Elon Musk, and where did that guy come from? 'Cause he's like an alien pretty much. But like he didn't come from nowhere, you know. Every like still specific things have had to happen. Like, no wonder he's like currently in Cal. I don't know where he was born. Like, let's just actually Google Elon Musk.
South Africa.
Really? Mm-hmm. He was born in South Africa. Born
I
and
think he
raised, but
might
then
be the first
spent
South
some.
African billionaire,
Ooh, that's awesome, dude.
but I'm not entirely sure on that. Maybe you can
Musk
tell me
spent
if I'm
time
wrong.
in Canada before finally moving to the U.S. Educated at the University of Pennsylvania in physics. Yeah, well, you know what I mean. It's like there is a specific chain of events that has to happen. Canada, the United States. Well, maybe obviously living in South Africa, maybe he learned specific skill sets which you wouldn't have learned if you were a child in the United States at the time, you know. So all of that kind of like spiraled into boom. Now he's in University of Pennsylvania, and now next thing you know, he's kind of wanna go and die on Mars. So don't know. If you want, we can move on real quick. We're 42 minutes down, and I don't want this to go like run over an hour. Like, the goal was to have a 20-minute podcast, but you know, good conversations, whatever.
You know, the after show.
Quickly, where does creativity go? Like, that is it a thing you can use up or whatever? Because I can sometimes feel like I'm drained and I can't come up with any single thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's weird.
So I think there's another thing I thought I had recently, that this kind of creativity, it's like in physics when you compress a volume of say gas. I mean, I think it's any matter. If you
Mhm.
compress it, you're also increasing its temperature, and by increasing the pressure, you're increasing the temperature. And so I thought there was a time I did the Google hash code 2 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours. In that time, I feel like I was so creative, and I feel like it was because my time has been compressed so much. I had to do all this thinking in such a short period of time, and so I feel like creativity. I don't know if you can see the parallel, not parallel, but connection there. That creativity requires so much effort, and you can only do it for so long.
Ah, okay.
And that's what coming up with creative solutions, because so we talked about creativity as coming up with ideas that most of them are feasible, but creativity as in, yeah, I mean, maybe when you're in that process, you are coming up with lots of ideas that aren't feasible to come up with that one idea, which in the moment you can decide, actually, this is feasible, and run with that. I mean, you could come up with like 20 ideas to solve a problem that's nearly impossible, you think, and you come up and you see that one, it actually works. And so yeah, the energy that you expend in being creative or creatively trying to find a solution, I think is a lot more than just doing routine tasks. And I think that's been
Oh,
studied anyway, but it's kind of where I got it from. I watched this YouTube video which referenced studies, but I think I'm quite on board with that idea, that
yeah. So
that
it's like
creative thinking,
something that you use up, kind of.
you could look at it like that, yeah. And so I kind of the Lex Friedman podcast. As I saw, he made a 30-minute not podcast, 30-minute video of his day, right?
No, I think I watched it. Yeah, he just like, but he
He's
did.
got like a deep work session, another
Yeah.
deep work session, and then at the end he's just got whatever the opposite of a deep work session is. I can't remember what he called it, but just like, well, the tasks that don't require a lot of deep thinking. And so, yeah, I think you can drain it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it requires more energy than some tasks.
True. Well, your brain is also using up energy and like burning calories and all of that. Last one for me. This is a bit of a different one. How does one capture a spike of creativity? And I feel like we already touched on it, where you're kind of doing deep work, and then something like comes in, right? And you're like, oh, I feel so creative now because the task is probably so boring that, or like tedious. I want to actually like your brain is just trying to like steer away from it, trying to like get something else, so you would be more entertained, I guess. But should you capture it, and how you capture it? I like the idea where you said you just note it down and don't look at it for now. Like try to just forget about it, because then maybe tomorrow when all that spike is gone, you're going to realize that, oh, that was actually a bad idea, Or maybe, but have you ever considered what if you actually acted on those ideas, You're doing the deep work and you're like, okay, actually my schedule allows me to push it aside. Let's pursue this idea. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. What's your thoughts
there's
on
just,
capturing?
I do that. I think part of it, and I think the whole point of it is really if you feel some sort of I at least feel some when I started doing this, because in the beginning I was like, I'd have ideas, but they would distract me from whatever I'm doing. So eventually I was like, okay, what can I do? And if you just write your ideas down on paper, you can free yourself from thinking about them, because they're permanently down on paper, so you can come back to them, so they're not lost, right?
But then again, there's a loss of fidelity when you note something down quickly, and all of the things that happen. Like, at least I feel like this way. When I'm having an idea or like an outburst of something, there's just like huge things like happening in there, and if I don't act on it or whatever, I may forget. If I note it down, the fidelity is lost. Like, you come back to it and read a few words that you noted down, and you're like, wait, what did I mean? You may misinterpret it.
I've got a bit of a solution to this. I mean, there's going to be trade-offs in all of this, right? So, I mean, you could just run with that idea, but pretty soon you'll realize that if you run with every idea, you will not get your work done. And so it's just kind of a solution. It's it's not perfect. I mean, it's what is, but you've got limited time. And so what I do nowadays is still trying to implement this kind of a color code almost. I do my notes and kind of trying to set a color code in which, if I'm just taking notes on whatever I'm learning, or just doing some worksheets, for example, solve some maths problems for practice. If I have an idea, I will write it right there in the notebook where I'm working right now, but I might do it in a different color. And right now I do it because I've not been carrying my pencil case and with all my color pens, fine liners. I just do like a hash symbol, pound symbol, footnote, and a dash, and then I write down whatever I'm thinking. But the idea of the color coding is just to kind of separate those kind of in the moment. What kind of a thought is this? What kind of is it related to what I'm doing? Because sometimes it is, but I can't think about it. Is it complete, or is it what I think is completely unrelated? And it can even help for later. If you think it's unrelated, you write it down, and because it's with all of your other work that you've been working on, and you read it and you don't know what the hell I was talking about there, what the hell you were talking about there. When you come back to it, you can read the context of it. What were you doing at the time? and maybe that's going to help
Oh,
you.
that's an
And
interesting
sometimes
one.
it's as something as little as um, using a certain word instead of another because you've been just using that word a lot in what you are doing, and you'll notice that. And sometimes it's like I'm learning about calculus, and then all of a sudden I've got a whole new view of the world, and I have a lot of ideas about it, and I write them down, and when I come back to them, I'm like, oh, I was learning calculus. This is why I thought about it this way,
Mm.
right? So that's the idea of it, and that's just kind of optimization of that. So optimizing for being able to find out, the goal being finding out what I was actually talking about, giving it some more context.
Wow. So like color coded notes in context, pretty much.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it's also faster. I mean, I don't have to pull out another notebook,
Mm.
open it, find a space, write it down. It's just in the middle of there. If I never come back to it, I never come back to it. But sometimes I do, and yeah.
Oh. Well, I don't really like use like physical notebooks. If I get like an idea for a YouTube video or whatever, I just quickly pull out my phone and like type it in down there. But now I'm thinking for more of like bigger ideas, maybe I could utilize like the recorder function, you know, like the voice recording. And especially
Mhm.
because, sad story, I cracked my phone and I was like, the repair is going to cost so much that I may as well just consider a new one. So, I mean, just got a new phone. Screw that. It apparently has some sort of like an AI assisted transcript from your recordings. Like you can record yourself or the interviewee, and then it's going to transcribe. And then once you come back into the notes of the transcription, you can delete a paragraph and it's going to literally cut out that paragraph from like the audio recording when you cut the paragraph out of the text recording. I was like, whoa, dude, this is huge. Maybe that's like a feature I would need to like start utilizing, because why not? You know, just having your kind of because it's easier. Like just have your phone in. And I know that some people, I don't know if that's what uh, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Why did his name pop up actually? Someone has almost like a tape recorder, or maybe they used to do that back in the day or whatever. They just like record themselves into a recorder, just like talk
Mhm.
into it, right, and then listen back to it when you actually have time. Because
Yeah.
you can that's like the interfacing speed is actually faster instead of having
Mhm.
to write something down or type it in.
Yeah.
You know, I
I
feel
think the
like you
problem is
could
coming
just.
back to it.
True.
Right? If you got a note, I think there is really quickly. You can skim through text really fast to find what you want. Whereas when you got a recording,
But then this
it
recording
transcribes.
is transcribed. Yeah, it's huge, dude. It's huge.
Well, I'd worry about how good the transcription is, but it is getting better. So
Well, we shall
I think
see.
like if you want like really good transcription, eventually you have to train it on yourself, on your own voice. So
Mm.
when we get there, that'd be awesome. But when you can when you can just train your transcription application on your own voice, and yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think that's us. That's us for now. Unless you have something else to bring up.
No,
I
I
feel
think
like
we're good.
that was a good productive conversation with some huge insights, bro. I actually enjoyed this. That was good. That was some good
I enjoyed
stuff.
and
That was good
I
stuff,
enjoyed
dude.
it too. It was good.
So in that case, we are thanking everyone for listening. If you want to find this podcast or the others, you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the other platforms where you usually listen to your podcast. We have a YouTube channel. There is a video version of this available on the interwebs. It's on YouTube. Just look for The Inside Scoop. We also are recording this live on Twitch, twitch.tv/MarioCerbalis. You can actually find out more about that under the video description on YouTube of this podcast if you're looking at it on the YouTube platform. But yeah, that was us. Really appreciate anyone listening, and catch y'all next week.
See you.